Today's episode's brought to you by 149 Flawless Episodes.
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I'm your host, Blevins, and with me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Not too much, my man. Last off-season episode before Season 2 begins. I know I'm pretty pumped about it.
And the 150th time I've got to do that intro. So,
false.
Pat yourself. Okay.
There's a solo episode out there, brother.
Okay, there's probably more than one, actually, but
I hosted with Andres a couple times too.
There's definitely time. The 150th time that we as a collective have said that intro. So the point I'm getting to is give yourself a pat on the back for 150 episodes. This is honestly we've done more than that probably, because there's like bonus episodes, half episodes, episode zeros, in between episodes we don't count, episodes we don't air, other shows, there's but for the official count,
I was gonna say I don't think we've ever recorded something and not released it.
That is definitely true, but I really wanted one fanatical High Noon Podcast listener to be like, I must find the lost episode of High Noon Podcast that never aired.
Well, we released it, but it's not part of the number.
Right. The official canon.
Keep searching.
Yes, if you're keeping up with High Noon Podcast lore and want everything to be canon official, we're on 150. Everything else is just not part of the lore, the actual lore. They're just one shots. But congrats, we made it to 150, and here's to another 150. But let's jump right into it and do a little bit of housekeeping, as we always do at the beginning of these shows. Blackwatch Report, of course, keeping the ball rolling, keeping the grind going, talking about Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 5, and all things competitive Overwatch, but not specifically Overwatch League. Blackwatch Report, make sure to check them out on their own channel, on their own podcast feed and Twitter and all that good stuff. Make sure to check them out. Foul Play is canceled this week, and Death will segue this into the reason it's canceled and why your setup looks just slightly different and maybe sounds just a hair off.
Yeah, so the podcast made it to episode 150, but my computer sure didn't. It's dead, guys. I don't know for sure that it's permanently dead, but right now I'm operating on the laptop I bought when I was in college, which at the time I bought specifically because it sucked and it couldn't load video games and things like that, and now it's biting me because that's all I've got at the moment other than my Switch. So yeah, Foul Play is going to be a no-go this week. We're coming up with a plan to be back in time for the Season 1 preview so you guys can get your lineups set. But for the time being, just know the highnoon.gg platform launched today, so that is live. You can start to form your league, schedule your drafts. You've got a short window to do it in, but get everything squared away and good to go there. And I will try my best to get this poor computer, this trusty friend of mine, back operational. And if not, we haven't really talked about it, but there's no other alternative. Blevins is going to have to host. But we will get it figured out on the fly as we go. Might change a little bit here and there, but I don't want to miss any more episodes than this week, obviously, as a result of this, since you gotta start the season strong, right? You can't start phoning it in right away. So as a show, we want to give you guys the same commitment you're giving. So
one thing I will say is that I really want a music bed for the entire show now, because of how smooth that went. Yes. So unfortunately, no Foul Play this week, but it will be coming back up. Guys, we are in the just a hair over a week before the season starts, and that means just a little over a week to get your power ranking submissions in for the power ranking contest. We've been getting a nice trickle in. People are catching up on the episodes and hearing me every week go, hey, make sure you get these in before February 14th. And I will reiterate, I'm making no exceptions to people who are late in their submissions. So get your power ranking contest in early before the first match starts. The second that match starts, I'm locking that thread, and no additional submissions can happen. You can message me on Discord. You can message me on Twitter. You can Venmo me hundreds of dollars. I'm not doing it. Actually, maybe if you no, I'm kidding. Not taking bribes for this.
We'll take the money, but we're not going to do anything about it.
Right. It's not really a bribe if we don't give you what you want, right?
I think that's how it works.
I have no idea how bribes work. But yeah, make sure you get that in the contest, the power ranking contest text channel in the High Noon Podcast Discord. Yes. So before we move on to the news, I do have a somewhat, to some people at least, an exciting announcement. I've been kind of radio silent on it for a while. People have been asking. People always murmur, "Oh, what's going on with Around the Payload? What happened to Around the Payload? What's going?" Well, Around the Payload has officially been scheduled and booked. I have a lineup. I have a roster. February 12th, 2 days before Overwatch League. I've got a big roster of folks coming in, and I'm gonna tease out some of those folks in the coming week before the episode. So stay tuned. It's a big one. It's so big that Death forgot to unmute his mic before he commented on it. But it's going to be a nice episode. It's going to be a real nice episode. So yeah, Around the Payload back. Okay.
Do you remember how to do that, Joe?
I never remember. If I take even a 1 week off, I go back and it's like everything is made of spaghetti, and I'm just like pulling at cords and stuff, and there's not even cords involved with it. I just have no idea what's going on.
We can install some extra cords so you can pull them if you get in a panic state.
Just like wrapped in GameCube controllers for some reason. Yeah, but it's going to be great. Good episode. Tweet at me who you think is going to be on the show. Actually, don't do that. There's no reason to. Tweet at me who you think is going to be on the show. So if they're not on the show, I'll get them on the next one. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about what we did last week, Death. Any fun and exciting Super Bowl party stories or Super Bowl anything?
No, literally the worst Super Bowl in living memory.
I was going to say, I'm not a huge football fan, as many of you know, or maybe many of you are surprised to hear, but that one was a stinker.
Oh, it was so bad. Honestly, it was brutal. And I mean, of course, me being me, I hated the outcome as well. But just to give like the best Super Bowl of all time, I would say was the New England comeback against Atlanta. So like, I'm not just hating on it because it was New England. I do hate the outcome as well. But I know it was just a brutally bad game. And to be honest, I wasn't really excited for it, and I didn't really care about it because, let's be honest, the best two teams got screwed out of their playoff games the week before. So I wasn't really super worried about it. And I watched it with Genesis on my TV and then a tablet off to the side with the Super Bowl on it. And Genesis was great.
Genesis was amazing.
I had a great time watching that. If you've never seen any Super Smash Brothers esports, I definitely recommend you check out a Super Major if you get the opportunity. It was a whole lot of fun.
Just go back and watch the whole top 8, honestly, of top 8 of Ultimate, and honestly, even the top 8 of Melee too. Watch both. They were really good.
At least like the last 2 or 3 matches, I thought on Melee were really good. It wore on me over time a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. It was a good time.
Yeah. So the Super Bowl, obviously the game was boring. The halftime show was laughably bad. No, here's the problem with the halftime show. It wasn't even laughably bad. It was just a subpar show. Nothing meme-worthy, no biffs, no baffs, no boffs. Nothing bad happened with it. It was just a bad show. It wasn't even funny or exciting or anything. It was just a lame show. And honestly, I'm thinking back, I can think of one commercial that I thought was good, and everything else was just mediocre. The Budweiser Game of Thrones commercial was great, and then everything else was just like mediocre.
Yeah, I never care about the commercials, so I didn't really pay attention to that.
See, I love the commercials. I was when I was watching the Game of Thrones one, I'm like, when they do the jousting thing and he gets knocked off, I'm like, oh man, I hope that this is the mountain, and he just chops him in half like as a joke, and then they pan over and it is the mountain. I'm like, what? And he did even better. He did the whole watermelon head thing. Oh man.
Spoilers.
Oh, spoilers for the commercial. Sorry.
No, not the commercial, the show. But we're
well, if you saw the commercial, then it spoils the show just as much as me saying the watermelon.
It's true. How dare you, Bud Light? Got a lot of nerve.
I mean, for what it's worth, that scene didn't happen with that thing. It doesn't give away enough. It gives away as much as me saying the watermelon head thing. Also, that's what, 3. I think you get like 2, unless it's like a pillar thing, like the Red Wedding. Like you get like 2 seasons of buffer before it can be spoiled to you. Honestly, you in reality you get about a couple hours before it can be spoiled to you in reality. But yeah, so let's move on here to news. A couple pieces of news here. One real piece of news that's actually relevant to the season. The other stuff is just fun fluff. We have seen yet another person get the high noon bump here, with Christopher being signed as an assistant coach for the Philadelphia Fusion. So, Christopher, congrats. Stepped down from the UK Overwatch World Cup team, and now he's assistant coach for the Fusion. So good on him.
Yeah.
Good to see that happen. Good to see yet another high noon bump up into the Overwatch League. And next piece here is the details for the Overwatch League All Access Pass on Twitch have been announced. A couple of highlights there. A new spectator mode on Twitch, or new spectator options on Twitch were announced. It's kind of the big piece here. It seemed like there was a lot more, a lot of extras from last year. I know you get, I think 200 Overwatch League tokens in game, so essentially 2 skins in game. There'll probably be exclusive stuff, and I believe, if I remember correctly, there is a like one-time OverwatchLeague.com merch discount that comes with the Overwatch League All Access Pass as well. So I will probably be getting that and making an order on OverwatchLeague.com at the same time. Which leads me into the last bit of air quotes news here. I mean, I guess it's technically news, but Season 2 team jerseys are up for sale on the OverwatchLeague.com website. These are the Season 2 jerseys for all of the teams. These are the Fnatic brand jerseys. They're not the whatever brand they used last year. So I would expect a higher quality. Although I can't attest to this because I have not. I don't own, I think, anything that's actually made from Fnatic. I don't think I've ever had or specifically know of anything from them. So if you guys do get a jersey, if you get one in, tweet at us or message us on Discord, put it in the Discord. I want to know kind of what the quality is. For my own personal knowledge for as a buyer, and then also I like to let people know, because I feel like I kind of got burned from my initial purchase of a jersey from Season 1. It was really kind of lackluster quality, and it really kind of wore out quicker than I would expect something that costs, $60, $70 or however much it was to do. So I'm hoping that they're better. I think there was a tweet from Flame that was talking about how these are an upgrade, or complaining about the official jerseys from last year and saying that they're better than the ones from last year. So that's a plus, but
more opinions help. help you be a little more confident when you purchase?
I would definitely like to be. In. Or I'd like to get some firsthand experience. But let's jump in here to the meat and potatoes of the discussion for today.
Oh, let's break it down.
We're going to start off with a little bit on the meta. And, of course, so the disclaimer here is we don't know what the exact meta is going to be. We do have maybe a little bit of an idea here, but we do have a couple of we've kind of got an idea of some teams that might benefit from what we believe the meta to be. So, Death, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about here?
Sure. So, essentially what we're looking at here is we know of meta that GOATS isn't gone. It might be a little different than what we've seen before in the traditional 3-3 composition, but essentially, you're seeing some single DPS characters mixed in, some here and there, and but right now ladder is still really dominated by Ryan and Zarya and things like that. But I will say I think the McCree, or not the McCree, the Winston comps, Winston as a tank I think is much better at the pro level than it is at the comp level, or no matter really what the rank is, you're going to have a better time playing Winston in a team environment than you would otherwise. So I think there's a good chance we do see maybe dive variants of GOATs with a single DPS mixed in. Brig is obviously still strong and still does a decent job countering some of the dive characters a little bit, but that's been nerfed down quite a bit as well. The big changes here that I think might push GOATs out of the meta a little bit or make it a little less relevant than people think is the big armor change that we just got. The way that interacts, I think, could mean that we're going to be seeing a little bit more hit scan oriented comps. Specifically McCree and Ashe, I think, are underexplored so far in this meta. We've definitely seen clips here and there. We've seen some notable Overwatch League players on stream really pop off with a Mercy in their pocket on Ashe, just absolutely just shredding people. And I don't think that's been fully explored, and I think we might see a situation kind of like we saw in Stage 4 of last season, where not everybody really knows exactly what to do. If you guys remember, Brig came out, was as busted as humanly possible. Teams didn't care. They still played Tracer. There was very little Brig in play. And I think we might be seeing something kind of similar here, where the one team, like Dallas, kind of said, well, we're going to play it because it seems broken to us. And I think if somebody rolls out, there's a good chance we could see maybe a more standard death ball, hit scan oriented. I think protect the McCree is kind of the strategy, right? You might still play 3 supports, something along those lines, but it's a very different play style to me than what traditional GOATs is. And I think there's a couple basically players here. Now, the usual disclaimer on all High Noon productions, we didn't watch a ton of the Korean scene. That's where a lot of the expansion team talent is coming from. And what we have seen of the Korean scene has been predominantly in the dive meta previous to the GOATS meta and then the GOATS meta. So it's been a long time since we've seen some of these guys really pull out the McCree in any serious way. And so as a result, I'm not super sure who the absolute standout McCree and Ashe players are likely to be from some of the expansion teams. But I do think on some of the traditional Season 1 teams that we have around, there's a couple left. A lot of them are gone. We talked about this a little in the pre-show, Blevins. Where's IDDQD? Where's Grim Reality? Those were our lights-out McCree players back in the day, and they're not here. So there was 4 that really stood out to us when we kind of had this conversation in the pre-show. The 3 that are just, I think, would be great on either one of the 2 heroes, McCree or Ashe, would be Linkser, Pine, and Carpe. We know the issues each of these teams are facing. Pine is stacked just super deep on a roster of DPS players, and like 3 or 4 of them can all play these heroes. But I mean, he got the big boss name from his McCree performance on Ilios, right? That's where it was dubbed, and we would be fools if we forgot how effective that man can be. So if there's even a niche home in the meta where McCree is an all-star pick, then I think Pine is going to be a big playmaker for NYXL there. Linkser was one of the people that showed it to us at times in Season 1. He pulled out the McCree a little bit. The guy, he got the name Dinkser from, I believe, his McCree play, as a matter of fact. I mean, it's absolutely nutty. Sometimes the pop-off ability, I think, is up there with most of the kind of hit scan specialists in the league, especially with some of the players that kind of headlined McCree that was at the top of their hero pool are gone now. I think that brought him up a little bit on the list of McCree players. And then Carpe for the Philadelphia Fusion.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we've seen him play that. Not so much last season, just kind of in the past. He's stuck in my mind, and maybe it's just, I mean, he can click heads like that with Widowmaker, so does he really need the scope? I mean, I don't know if we need to go too much deeper than that with the analysis on Carpe. The guy's just nuts. And then one more I wanted to bring up, maybe from a team that people wouldn't expect us to mention here, not a team we're particularly high on, but Effect from the Dallas Fuel really kind of led the way when Ash got released as far as streaming and kind of showing people the upward potential of the hero. And I think if there's a spot where I don't know, we've seen him play McCree in the past a little bit. The guy's just got a really deep hero pool, but Ash specifically, I think if Ash becomes meta, Effect could be an absolute game changer. And if Dallas is going to elevate to become a playoff team this year, it's going to have to be on the back of a Effect on a hero like Ash, where maybe he's got a bit of a gap between the rest of the field as far as who's the best there. So, yeah, those are kind of the four teams, New York, Houston, and Dallas, and Philly, that I think really have standout performers at these positions. It doesn't speak to their other roster issues or anything like that, but I just think if I'm a little bit right, even a little bit, that the meta might move towards some of these hit scan heroes. These are just some players specifically to keep an eye out for. And then, yeah, well, listen, we've not seen these guys really run goats. So as far as the other aspect of it, who do I think would excel in a goats environment? I'm looking at teams that are very synergy based and very tank heavy in their talent, and maybe even a little diverse, right? Because I'm gonna bring them up again, because I think in this particular, and this is the one case where I think a lot of people think Houston would have a lot of upward, is in a GOAT meta. They were very teamwork based. They were very synergy based in season 1. And also, if you're just going to be playing, a main tank and then Zarya and D.Va at the same time, Spree was the best Zarya in Overwatch League last season. So if Zarya is out there all the time, it might be, even with the DPS additions, I mean, it might be the best utilization of talent for Houston to roll out their 3 tank players, Linkser, and you know what I mean, and then their support players. That could be the best they could look in a situation like that. And then also, there's a couple other teams come to mind. I know we've seen Poco play plenty of the Zarya as well. So I just really want to look to the teams that have versatile main tanks who can switch between the different GOATS variants. Maybe you want to run the Winston comp, you want to run the Reinhardt composition. So London stands out there, just having that very solid tank line and the versatility within the hero pools. They've only got the 2 guys to do it with, but those 2 guys cover everything you could ask for. So it's just a matter of finding that either Zarya or D.Va player to fill in. And there's a couple other options, but really what we're looking at is teams that have very versatile main tanks that can play any of the variants and keep the same level of play. Sorry, Boston. Gamzu's not known for that. That would be an example of a team that I think might struggle in a GOATS meta. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of room here, I think, for teamwork and synergy if it's GOATS to really reign supreme. So, maybe look for the teams that showed that at times. The LA Valiant are another example that really come to mind. Maybe never had the star pop-off potential that we saw from a lot of the other teams that finished really well, but just managed to come together at the right time and get the wins they needed in whatever capacity they were able to. So, yeah, those are kind of the teams and the players that I'm really looking at in this meta that I think will have a chance to shine. Whether that means team success or not, we'll have to wait and see. But, yeah, that's kind of how I view the meta right now. Heavy GOATs maybe, but that'll probably decrease over time. Maybe we'll move into more the hit scan kind of a role and not sniper even.
Yeah, the one thing I want to say about the meta in general with the addition of 8 new teams is, we saw, generally speaking, in season 1, there was a meta, air quotes. It was either dive or, it was whatever it was, anti-dive, what have you. And most of the teams would be running the meta or some close variation of it at most times. But there was always, NYXL to an extent, Boston to an extent, and some other teams that were just and Houston really too, that were either really struggled with what the meta was or just kind of ignored what the meta called for and ran their own thing and ran opposed to it. And I think with the addition of almost doubling the number of teams, we're going to see more teams do their own thing and maybe be able to do their own thing. Maybe, teams have found a composition of players that can run something outside of the meta, or it's like in going back to Magic the Gathering references, there's always a air quotes best deck in the format, but like it's very, very rarely ever like, the whole top 8 was just 8 copies of that deck. I think maybe that's happened a couple of times over the years, but not. Coblet was one of those times. But usually it's like, and even in times like that, there's always like the pro player. It's like if mono red is the best deck, there's always like the old time pro player that's like, well, so-and-so pro player is always going to play blue-white control or blue-black control, no matter what the format is, and like be able to do well. Maybe they're not the best team in the league, but they might be able to run dive or run, whatever. And I think that with the addition of extra teams, it's going to be less likely that we see a defined meta. Maybe we'll see what I think would be kind of cool is if we saw, especially with the teams being more delineated and differentiated with their divisions, maybe we see a difference in meta between the divisions. Maybe Atlantic Division plays more goats and Pacific Division plays more dive, and it's just like, we're just our own little ecosystem that plays each other more times has evolved into this. I think that would be really cool to see more of a differentiation in terms of how the teams actually play in the division. So I don't know.
We can always go deeper with MTG references. I'm still waiting to see that team be that counter pick team. Yeah. I want somebody to embrace that. Like, okay, sure, it's easy to know what the meta is going to be when it's figured out beforehand in scrims and we've been playing against it for weeks. So let's in secret develop the counter to that, to go into the MTG references. When Ravager was the deck, right? I just played 12 main deck artifact hate. Like, turn 1, kill your land. Turn 2, kill your land. I'm gonna get there. You're gonna run out of to do. I'm waiting for somebody to do that kind of a thing. And we saw that again. It was kind of like a light version of what Dallas did. And I think there's room for that in Overwatch, but you do need a relatively healthy meta for that to be the case, right? Like the old school goats meta before these recent changes wasn't that time, right? Like it was actually, it was Cobblade, it was Ravager, it was too good. You had to just get on board or get out of the way. But now the armor changes, things like that. The armor change to me is such a fundamental shift in the way interactions play out, that there's things out there, there's 2 hero combos, right, like on your DPS score, that I just feel like haven't been explored because teams feel like they can't take Brig out of their lineup for whatever reason. And we've seen that in the past with professional Overwatch players and teams. They seem slow to adapt, and that's weird from us coming from the strategy world where we're so sick of the old meta, right, that like you release a new set in Magic and like I'm not playing that deck anymore. I've got all these new toys, and as soon as they release it, we're like proxying them up. We're trying to figure. So we're like doing everything in our power to live in the future. And in this game, where mechanical skill isn't a thing that exists in card games, right? So it can't win the day. And so when you've got the tournament right in front of you, you play what you're comfortable with so that the teamwork is there, and then you let your mechanical skill win the day. And that's, I think, maybe been a bit of a crutch for teams, but I don't. I've been wrong often enough.
I think it was a crutch I think it was definitely a crutch for Lunatic High and Envious coming into season 1 for sure.
Yeah.
I think with the divisions actually meaning more in season 1, like, was there really a difference between Atlantic and Pacific? No, they all played each other the same number of times. It was really in name only, essentially, and then with the playoffs and whatnot. But now playoffs, yeah.
First one of the year.
First one of the year. Now with NYXL doesn't need to worry about what Shanghai Dragons is playing in season 1. Not that that would be relevant anyway, but like they're not playing each other in season 1. So it doesn't matter. You don't need to worry about some of these teams. And I think, maybe if I'm just pulling out random references. If Hangzhou Spark knows that it doesn't have to play against NYXL or Houston Outlaws, like if Houston Outlaws and NYXL are both running Dive the whole season, like, well, they don't need to play against Dive. They can run whatever they want, whether it's good against Dive or not. If Dive is the meta or Goats is the meta, but the best teams playing Dive are in the other division and I'm not playing them this stage, I can run whatever I want because I'm better than the other teams in my division. So I think maybe that doesn't play out as drastically as I'm saying here, but I think it's going to be closer to that than it was in season 1, where it was just like, oh, we're all in the same thing. We're all playing each other the same number of times for the most part. And,
plus or minus one.
One time you're missing a team potentially, but now it's like, you're playing fewer games, you are playing against each team fewer times, so the meta might be, I think, is going to evolve, and it's going to be different, I think, because there's fewer games and also more teams. So there's just a greater diversity of the games being played overall. So, all right, enough about that. That was the potatoes of the discussion. Now we're getting into the meat. This is what we all came here for. This is the bold predictions. This is the episode. It's going to be easy to remember. It's 150. That after season 2, we come back, listen to this. We go into these notes that have not been heavily doctored after the fact because we're recording it now and it is live. And we're going to see what we got right and what we got wrong and just how right and wrong we were.
Yes,
about these
and I don't know if I read it this way and it wasn't intended this way. We will review these at the end of the year. We did last year. Somebody made a comment like, bold predictions don't mean anything if you don't cover them again. And it felt like a shot, but I'm like, yo, we did a whole episode. All we did was because, well, and plus last year, a lot of them were right. Like we had a really good, for bold predictions, we were like 50% plus, if my memory serves correctly, on like how right we were. So yeah, we had no problems going back and reviewing those. Maybe we wuss out this time if we're like 0 for 10 on ours, but no, we definitely won't, because it's way too much fun to make fun of ourselves like that. We have way too that. So
we have the checks
we'll be reviewing
and balances,
this no matter what.
With the checks and balances, if we're both wrong, we still get to make fun of the other person for half of the show. So
we'll pretend like I'll pretend like mine were more plausible than yours, and then
or if we're all right with it, we're definitely reviewing them. So why don't we just go one at a time, talk about one each, and talk a little bit about it, and we'll go from there.
So you want to get our ones that are just directly aimed at you out of the way first?
Sure.
All right. So my first bold prediction, and I want to give everybody a quick reminder. Bold predictions aren't, don't come on Discord and be like, I can't believe you're predicting this. Not what we're doing. A bold prediction is things I wouldn't bet on. I'm not saying I think are going to happen.
Like prop bets.
But I can see it, right? Like I can, in my head, I can see that world, and I don't think it's super crazy. So I'm saying it now,
not
so
plausible,
that way I'm
possible.
I can't So I'm saying it now so that I can't be wrong about it because I put it in this section, but I can be right about it. That's what we're getting.
Yes, we're really just taking the no risk bet here.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you as fans for enjoying bold predictions, because it's a lot of fun for us to do. And like I said, we can't be wrong. So.
Another disclaimer about the bold predictions is that each bold prediction is independent of the other ones. They're not necessarily connected. They don't all have to happen. Honestly, if all of them happened, it would be really crazy. But like one isn't dependent on the other. There can be contradictory ones potentially, although I don't think there really is here. But each specific bold prediction is independent of all the other ones.
Listen, if we go 10 for 10 and get all these right, we better be hosting the Watch Point shows for season.
Just fire everyone else.
Because we would literally be there. Because I've read them, and plenty of them are nuts. Some of them on mine, and some of them on yours. But let's get right into it. We're going to start things off and make it real personal for Blevins right out of the gate. I'm going to just go ahead and say it, Blevins. New York Excelsior are not a top 4 team in Season 2. They don't have a bye in the playoffs. They're not going to be able to do any sandbagging, which might be good for you in the long run. But, yeah, I think the other teams there's a good chance the gap's been closed. We saw some cracks in the armor when Jonak doesn't get to play Zenyatta, so maybe we get a meta where he falls flat on his face. And maybe not flat on his face. The guy wasn't bad, but he wasn't Jonak when he wasn't on Zenyatta. But yeah, so I can see a world where the NYXL are a mid-table team.
Well, I'm going to take that one and spin it on its head, kind of. And say that my bold prediction is that New York Excelsior does not choke in the playoffs.
It's pretty bold because we've seen like 3 playoffs with them, not counting outside of Overwatch League, and they love to choke.
Yeah. But there's 2 edges to this blade. So the one level 1 edge is that they make it to the playoffs and they just win, and they don't choke in the playoffs. That's great. The other edge is that they don't choke in the playoffs because they don't make the playoffs.
Right.
You can't choke in the playoffs if you don't make them. So I got both ends of the spectrum covered with this bold prediction. So
I like it.
Here's hoping.
I gotta ask though. Do you think they'd be less likely to choke if they didn't play in the Big Apple? You know, I'm just throwing it out there. All right, bad joke. We'll move on. But my next bold
that's in reference to
the Big Apple. It'd be easier to choke on a bigger apple.
Oh,
right? It was a really
me-level dumb joke.
Yeah, of course. Weapons, we're on the same level here. That's why this show works. Try to keep up. All right, so my second bold prediction here is that the Vancouver Titans are not in the playoffs or even part of the wild card weekend. I think the hype is way overdone. I think, even though that's true, and again, not betting on this because I'd say at least wild card weekend is probable here. But I don't think they have to succeed. People just love this team so much, and I think there's a little bit of blinders on, and I think we're all about to learn a lesson. And they're the one team, like I've said all along, they're the one team that this might not apply to, right? Because Overwatch League wasn't big enough for all the talent that was available to choose from in the first season. So it's very possible this team is just fine, and I might even put my money on them being, in the playoffs. But it doesn't have to be that way. I've talked about it a lot this offseason. Sometimes you step onto the stage with the bright lights and you blink. We don't have a lot of games here, so what if that means an 0-5 start to the season? An 0-5 start to the season means playoffs are going to be a rough go. And wild card weekend, another losing streak anywhere in the season like that can be a very big deal. To put it in perspective, it's like a 10-game losing streak in the NHL, and they play like 80-something games. It's like you're done. Just you've got to then win 10 back. You've got to be go on a 10-game winning streak in order to get it done. It's really hard to streak like that in leagues where there's a lot more games, and I think those slight cold streaks that we saw some teams just not get punished for in Season 1, a lot of them will get punished, and I can very easily see Vancouver being one of those teams that just, maybe they're fine, but they just hit a cold streak and they don't make it. So that'll be my second bold prediction. What do you got?
Well, I think just as a follow-up comment to that is that the possibility of that comes from, and I think you mentioned this maybe last week or the week before, there's a lot of recent tape on that team. More so than, honestly, more so than any other Overwatch League team, because they've been off. They have not been playing streamed games. They've not been in the spotlight. Whereas Runaway was playing in contenders and won contenders and has recent tape of high level play where they were actually trying. So I also would not put my money on that bold prediction, but. Trying to think.
It's from an analyst standpoint. When we were talking about this team with the other ones, it's like, man, I don't know how they're substitute these DPS players. But with Runaway, it's like, well, let's just go watch a VOD and
Yeah.
They don't bring Hurag in. They do, like,
Right.
on occasion. It's like a token appearance kind of a thing. And like,
Yeah.
so we know kind of how they're going to operate and what they're going to do. And they played more games in a meta that's similar more recently to what we have now. I think it's different enough that won't matter much, but just kind of their general game plan, who to prepare for, things like that. That's stuff teams are going to have on them right now.
I think that this one, or maybe one of your other ones, is probably your most bold prediction. I think
There's a couple bold ones.
there's some pretty bold ones. I've got some pretty bold ones here. I'm gonna go with a bold prediction that I don't really want to be true, because I'm like low key pulling for this team, but my bold prediction is that Fissure is not going to make a market improvement to the Soul Dynasty. I think, Soul's problem was never a lack of talent. Even, though Miro and some of their other players didn't really pan out, Miro was not a bad player, at least at one point in time. I think he was strong. He was strong, and then it seemed like everyone kind of leveled up and caught up to him. But he wasn't a bad player. It just really didn't gel. Fleta, never bad. Jaehong, never really bad. It was really just kind of how the team was managed, how they ended up playing their matchups, taking Fleta out for any conceivable reason at any time. Like, what's going on? I don't think it was ever really a lack of talent. So taking a player like Fissure, who obviously very high skilled player, you'd think, oh, you're adding more talent to a team. That's got to be good, right? Adding good stuff to a team is going to make the team more good. That logically makes sense, but I'm not thinking that talent was ever really the stopper for Soul Dynasty. So I'm not thinking, even though it seems like such a level one, duh, you're adding one of the, if not arguably by some people, the best main tank in the league to a team, they're going to be better, and there's going to be a market improvement. I don't think it necessarily pans out that way.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to. That's definitely for certain a divisive player, somebody that seems to have benched themselves in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. What if he just decides he doesn't want to play anymore in stage 2 sometime? I can't rule it out after what we saw with him in the Gladiators. He, to me, doesn't have the athlete mindset that so impressed us about EQO when we got to sit down and meet with him. To me, if I was on the LA Gladiators and the playoffs started, I think other than losing my right arm, I'm pretty sure I would have found a way to be on that stage. Even then I might have tried to make it work with one arm.
Right. And before people are like, oh, well, he wanted to get traded. He wanted to go to an all-Korean team, blah, 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 blah. It's like, it doesn't matter. You're on that team now. It's such a thing. I think it's just a disconnect between people who didn't play sports growing up or have that sports mindset. It's you don't do that, man. You play with the team, you give it your all, because it doesn't matter oh, well, he's saving his real face for the team he wants to be on. It's well, I guess he wants to be on Soul now, but what if he doesn't? That it's a character flaw regardless of the reason that it's happening, because it's happening, and it can happen again. What if, like you said, what if he
even down to high school sports where everything was as cliquey as humanly possible, and somebody you hated you walked into that locker room and they were your brother. It sounds corny, it sounds stupid, but it was. If they screw up, you're trying to lift them up. You're trying to get, you know what I mean? And it could have been somebody that I wouldn't have crossed the street to say hello to, otherwise, but just. You wear the same shirt I do, and that's all I needed to know. And that's the athlete mindset that I think.
Yeah, you leave the other stuff off the field, off the stage, off the court, etc. But he did not do that. There's a number of other players that we won't get into now that have done that. That's just it's a red flag as a player, and for that reason and more, my bold prediction is Fissure not making a market improvement to the Soul Dynasty this season.
All right, my third bold prediction here is that the grand finals are held in the Eastern Hemisphere. I'm thinking China. We just added our, second, third, and fourth Chinese team. I could really see China being the host for the grand finals this year. If not, let's put it in Korea. Obviously, they've got a pretty big esports following. I think it would be really, really exciting if it was in Korea, but I would lean towards China. But for this bold prediction, to give myself the most chance of being correct, I'll just say Eastern Hemisphere.
I would kind of like to have a reason to go to China or Korea. I think it'd be cool. I've never been. It'd be an interesting trip to take. I don't even know how bold that is, honestly. I don't even think that that's that bold. With the addition of 3 Chinese teams, I don't know, man. I mean, I guess maybe it's kind of bold for them to do it this early, but even so, I don't know.
Well, might not be super bold. That's fine.
It's not your boldest one, that's for sure.
That's true.
Okay. I'm going to pick actually, kind of the rest of mine are pretty bold.
yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I didn't go Captain Insano like you did. So it's easy for you to be like, that's
you gotta
not that bold.
Go for glory, okay?
I wanted, basically what I wanted was one that wasn't like X's and O's, win record, this team makes the playoffs, doesn't. I wanted one that was more leaguey, but yeah.
I like it. And I wouldn't be upset with that one. I'd like to go to a foreign country. Okay, I'm gonna go here. All right, I'm gonna do these next 2 in a row. But I'm not gonna do them one after the other. But I'm gonna go with. I'm boldly predicting that the San Francisco Shock will finish the season with a losing record. I think we've talked about it before. They're a pretty highly rated team overall from people's predictions. Just the pen and paper tests, they've made improvements. But there's something about them for me that's just like it's almost like the adding Fissure to Soul Dynasty. Just adding a good thing to a team doesn't necessarily automatically make them better. Adding Striker to San Francisco Shock, it's like, okay, Striker, amazing player by many metrics, a top 2 player in the league from the DPS standpoint, or at least top 5. Again, I don't know if the DPS line was what San Francisco was struggling with. If anything, they were an embarrassment of riches at the DPS at their DPS line. They still kind of are. I don't know if adding just kind of an upgrade to that position is going to be what makes them better. I think if anything, it's going to. It seems just from the NYXLs of the world, the LA Gladiators, the San Francisco Shocks. There's this just like glut of DPS players. It's like, how are they gonna actually roll them out? Are they gonna do split time? Are they gonna have split maps? Is it gonna be like, I don't know. What I do know is that if you're splitting time, scrim time, preparation time between your DPS players, they're not going to be at maximum capacity, right? Striker getting less play time is not going to be better for Striker. So even though Striker is an amazing player, he's not playing every map no matter what, like he was on Boston. Or it's unlikely that he's going to. And if they are, then they still have, either Sinatra or Baby Bay or whomever that's not, or Architect, that's one or two of those players is going to be on the bench for more time than they probably deserve. And I don't think that, having them on the bench does not necessarily make them a better team. So long-winded way of saying the embarrassment of riches here at the DPS spot, not impressing me with the San Francisco Shock. I'm boldly predicting that they are going to have more losses than wins this season.
All right, well, Blevins, why don't you go again? Because my last one's kind of a meme, so
okay.
We can use that one as the...
This one is also kind of a meme. And again, these aren't related, so they don't necessarily both have to be true, although it might be, depending. My other bold prediction here is almost the inverse. This one was really just kind of pulled out, so I don't even have much of a defense here. I have one defense. my other bold prediction here is that the Florida Mayhem is going to finish
God, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't
with
do it.
a record above 500. They're going to have a winning record.
Oh, God, you said it out loud. Cut the VOD.
I have learned nothing from putting faith in Florida last season. I'm putting it back in. I said I was done. I said I was off the sauce last season. I lied. I'm back on it. In bare hands we trust. It's happening. Florida, more wins than losses, or at the very least a 500 record. 14-14 is the minimum for my bold prediction.
You wrote it in the notes as finish above 500, so when it comes time to do the recap episode, you're not getting credit.
I'm getting credit. I am getting credit. If they finish 14-14, I'm getting credit.
Don't worry, Chad. I won't let them take it.
I'm taking it.
All right, so I have one here, and this one is a little bit me just thumbing the nose of everybody in Discord that likes to give me a hard time for it. Houston's going to finish first place in one of the stage standings. I don't think it's super bold necessarily to say, but you guys certainly do.
I think this is your boldest. So, this is your boldest one, I think.
I mean, they finished second last time, right? Like I don't think it's crazy out of the realm of possibility, but you know. Here. The likelihood would be, I think, the highest in the first stage, so like a strong start from them, while the expansion teams are kind of soft, while, you know, the meta might play into them a little more, similar to how stage 1 did for them last time. But yeah, I'm going to say they've got a chance. I'm not saying they win because we've never seen them in the playoff environment. I'm not going that crazy to say they like win the stage championship or anything like that, but standings for the stage, like they've got the #1 seed going into a stage playoffs. At least one of them. Doesn't mean that they make the playoffs. It doesn't mean you guys are wrong about your predictions either, but because like I said, we saw them get that close last time with a second place there. So you know, it could certainly go either direction. But yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna put Houston in first place. They're going to have a Valiant / Uprising style stage this year, because nobody believes in them.
It's not out of the realm, but I think that is your boldest prediction. And I think that this one, this last one for me is also, well, I don't know, the Florida Mayhem finishing above.
You got a lot of bold. You got a lot of bold to call it.
I maxed out on bold here. But here's my last one. My bold prediction, my last bold prediction here is that we will see at the end of the season more expansion teams in the top 4 than Season 1 teams. So that means we're going to see 3 expansion teams and 1 Season 1 team in the top 4 of the standings, or 4 expansion teams. That's my bold prediction. I mean, yeah, it's a big one. It's a doozy. But you know what? As much as I harp on having the experience on stage, having the staff there that's ready, being used to playing a full season and being in LA and doing the team thing and all this stuff, maybe that just gets thrown out the window. Maybe these teams are ready for that. Maybe they've been mentally preparing that. Maybe they're just more prepared for it. Maybe the Season 1 teams are not prepared for what, like, there's 2 levels there's 2 levels here. Like, the Season 1 teams, like, they know what they have to do, and obviously you're always trying to improve, but like when you're at the top, like, there's nothing else above the Season 1 teams, right? Because they've been there. Like, the bar, you don't know how high you need to jump for the bar to keep that team from jumping above you. The Season 2 teams know exactly where that bar is. So the Season 2 teams, like, why are you even trying? Like, you need to be shooting for this bar and trying to, and you know you need to pass it because the Season 1 teams have done that at least. So how far above that bar do you go? I don't know. I think it's possible that I think it's at least possible that the expansion teams come out swinging. They put way more into it, maybe to the detriment of some of these teams, but they go all out. They push it. I mean, a team like Vancouver could come out really hot in, you know, they're ready. They're primed and ready to go. They know what they need to do. They're already a cohesive unit. They pop off early. You know, they also could be really cold because a lot of people have, but they could pop off real early. The murmurings of a lot of people watching scrims right now is that Hangzhou Spark is kind of slept on. Maybe some of these teams that we just haven't seen, the NA viewers like us haven't seen a lot of the Korean teams play, Defiant, Hangzhou Spark, all these teams. Maybe, I think at least some of them are slept on. Maybe they've come out, they pop off. Maybe some of the old talent that we, came to know and love in season 1 isn't up to snuff or isn't as dominant as they once were in a bigger pool. Maybe it's not even that they're not as good, but some of these teams just kind of counter them. The way they play, it's just kind of a counter. It's like Houston with London. By pretty much every metric, you would say London greater than Houston, except every time they played against each other.
They play, yeah.
Right.
Well, you gotta pick Houston.
It happens in sports all the time. There's always like that one team, or I remember in baseball specifically, there was a pitcher for the Indians. I think his name was Chuck Finley in the mid to late 90s that would just always beat the Yankees, no matter what. He was like a middle of the road, middle of the ballpark pitcher, never really did that good, but man, could he kill the Yankees. Maybe the Hangzhou Spark just can never lose to NYXL. Maybe they just will not lose to any. A lot more of that is possible with the expansion of teams, with the teams coming in, not having necessarily a lot known about them, but knowing exactly what they need to do. I think there's a lot of factors here, and there's a lot of things that maybe we don't talk about as much that are almost like intangibles a little bit that can lead to these expansion teams being even more powerful than we ever expected, and therefore, my bold claim has some merit whatsoever, but who knows. And Deathblow has a great retort that no one can hear.
Dude, my computer is so laggy right now. It's crazy. So I was trying to fix it and do stuff. But yeah, my apologies there. Yeah, I'm just disappointed that you got drunk on the Contenders Kool-Aid. And
No. I'm not drunk on the Contenders Kool-Aid. I took a shot of the Contenders Kool-Aid so that I could have something to talk about for this bold prediction.
My fifth one, not to give that conversation any more time.
Yeah, that was enough.
Than it already
that was exactly the.
That was enough. I'll take things that aren't going to happen for what are the numbers I can use in that joke, Blevins? Now
200, 400, 800, 1,000.
To know good numbers. 500 it is. Okay. My last bold prediction. I don't know why we told that joke. Me and you are the only ones that get it.
True.
My last bold prediction, and I think this is my boldest one, Blevins. That people will stop calling every single composition that has ever played in Overwatch goats. Can we stop, please? Can compositional names, which are super fun and I love, can they have meaning? Can we not just say every single thing that comes after the initial goats is goats from here on out? Floats, shut up! Right? I don't care. Just literally any moats is probably a thing. I've lost track. I don't count them anymore. Yeah, I want composition names to be fun and have meaning, and just calling everything goats isn't doing that. So just stop, please.
Well,
that's my appeal to the Overwatch community at large.
I agree, because it's the same thing with anytime there's a scandal of any kind, they call it the something gate scandal, like Watergate, but that just doesn't make sense. It's not a reference to anything. It's just it's dumb. But yeah, no, I agree. Be creative.
It drives me nuts. Right. And stop just I saw people, and these are Overwatch League people, and I'm not going to name any names, but they're May Goats is really big, and McCree Goats is going to be really strong. And it's what world are we in? This isn't a thing where it's you're instantly not there anymore, right? As soon as you named that DPS hero, we're just in a 3 support comp. Come up with a new name.
Right. Unless
unless
Goats is literally playing it, then
right. You can't sit there and complain about Goats being in every single game and then call every single composition that ever gets run Goats, because you'll never like a meta ever again.
Man, I hate basic lands, man.
That's
any deck that has lands in it, that's affinity. Any deck that has artifacts in it is affinity. I can't stand that affinity decks are ruining the format.
I guess I don't know. I lost my. But I guess that it's just too much to ask for. I think it's not going to happen. That's by far my boldest prediction.
We don't need to go back to We don't need to go back to like, oh, just calling it triple tank or whatever. Like, we can still call it something cool. Just come up with a better name. Don't make everything a variation of goats.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is
tankless
goats. What?
That's not how. Yeah, what did I say on Twitter the other day? I'm like, I don't know. I think there's a decent chance we get back to the whole Winston, Diva, Tracer, Genji goats composition that I've been hearing so much about.
Yeah. Is Dive just called no goats now? Like not goats? Not goats.
Floats is what they call it.
Is that like pharmacy goats? Is that floats?
It's goats with Winston instead of Reinhardt is what.
Like, okay, floats is like kind of on a decent track because it's like a minor variation. Right. I'll give floats a pass here, but calling it May goats or McCree goats, no, done. Yeah. Get it out of here. Call it something else or stop. No, you
if
do
you're
not
in the
get a pass.
3-3 realm, I'm okay with it, right? If there's 3 tanks and 3 supports out there, fine. That we can call that goats. But one DPS hero comes in and it's gone. It's not goats anymore. Get out of my face with that nonsense.
Yeah. I agree. I'll give floats a pass, but everything else, let's just, you know what? Maybe, you know what?
Goats, notes.
You know what? Maybe we're not the heroes that the Overwatch League community needs, but we're the ones that they deserve. So we're gonna have to we're gonna have to come up with these naming conventions ourselves. So.
Oh, they're gonna be terrible. You guys are gonna hate it. This is what you get, though.
Yeah, this is what you get. This is what you deserve. You come up, you call something May goats. You're out of here. I'm pulling off the umpire mask and tossing you out of the game.
And Blevins, real fast before we close out the episode, I did put out some feelers restarted to some people that are more plugged into contenders than us. TMP got back to me here, so thank you for that. Some McCree players to look out for. He was kind of the same mind where we were. Been a long time. I don't know too many that are notable McCrees, but he did give me 2. Happy from Guangzhou, and then Ying Zhao Long were 2 that he said were at least known for McCree back when it was good, and when they played it in the past. So those are another couple of teams and players maybe that you can keep an eye on and maybe succeed a little more.
Who is the second one?
Ying Zhao Long.
From which team? I'm like, I didn't hear what team you said. Maybe you just didn't say it.
I'm trying to look it up, and I'm blanking on it off the top of my head.
Might be
just really hard to do anything on this computer.
That's okay. We'll get
Arc is the one that I thought was correct. Chengdu. He plays for Chengdu. So
okay.
Don't look out for Chengdu.
Maybe. We'll see.
I mean, for some of your predictions to be right, we're going to have to.
True. That is true. Chengdu's going to have to pull a lot of weight for my predictions to be close. But, guys, that's going to be it. Those are our bold predictions. Why don't you tweet at us some of your bold predictions at High Noon Podcast on Twitter. Tweet them at us, and we'll include them. We'll include them in our review. But make sure you do tweet at us.
Yeah, if you get them right.
Yeah, any of them that are right, tweet at us. We want to know. We want to know what you're boldly predicting. So, and actually, if you're wrong, maybe we'll pick out a couple of notable bad ones.
I mean, if Thornmane makes one of these wrong, we're gonna have to bring it up. But otherwise, hopefully, we get enough submissions that we can't read all.
We shall see. But, guys, that is going to be it. Make sure you check out all of our good stuff over highnoonpodcast.com. If you do want to support the show in a financial matter, you always can over at patreon.com/highnoonpodcast. We have a ton of awesome patrons every month that are supporting us, helping the show improve, helping us get to the... Man, if we have to fly to China, that's not... but the Patreon does help us do stuff like that if we ever have to do that. But you can always follow us pretty much everywhere on social media. We're High Noon Podcast on everything. But that is going to be it, guys, for Deathblow. I am the Blevins, and remember, it's High Noon.
Got his boots, and he put on his hat. Threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past, and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine, now God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one
My bonus bold prediction is that Hex keeps the beard throughout season 2. Let's hope.